This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Here's a much easier, much more reliable method for making a great pan pizza. A pizza style pioneered in the American Midwest and, yes, popularized by a global chain that rhymes with Itzaglut. They don't need my publicity. You can absolutely use any pizza dough with this method, but here's what I've been using for pan pizzas lately. Bread flour, but all-purpose would be fine. A cup to start with, like 120 grams. I actually put in a little too much, you'll see. Half a teaspoon of salt, maybe 3 grams. 2 or 3 grams of sugar, half a teaspoon, and half a teaspoon of dry yeast, a gram or 2. A little glug of olive oil, maybe a couple of teaspoons. And you don't have to do this, but garlic powder inside the dough works great with a thick crust pizza. In a thin crust, too much of it would burn. Just a dash. I'm only making one portion of dough here. And instead of water, I'm using milk. Pizza Butt uses various powdered milk products in their crusts. It makes for some very nice caramelly notes in the browned surface. Half a cup of milk. Some people say you gotta scald milk before you use it in a yeast bread. Heating it to almost boiling deactivates enzymes or proteins in the milk that can interfere with the gluten and the rise. I tried this dough with scalded milk and with milk straight from the fridge, and I noticed absolutely no difference. Maybe because my milk is pasteurized? I don't know. I do know that I put in too much flour, so more milk to balance it. I think wet, sticky doughs are better for pan pizza. They bake up fluffier. And when I'm kneading a tiny little ball of dough for just one pizza, I kind of like to do it up in the air between my hands. This is super easy. You just kind of squish it and grind it between your palms. It's oddly satisfying, and it doesn't get the counter dirty. Let's see, is it smooth and elastic enough that I can form a thin sheet without it tearing? Check. Form it into a smooth ball? I wish it was a little bit stickier, but it's fine. Back into the bowl, cover it up, and let it rise for an hour or 2. This took 2 because my kitchen is super cold right now, doubled in size. You could absolutely do my normal thing where I put the dough straight in the fridge and let it ferment slowly for a few days. That's good too. But either way, we're going to do a second rise in the pan. I used to use cast iron for pan pizza, but I have switched to my non-stick, a 10-inch Teflon pan with an oven-safe handle. You could use cast iron, but I have found this makes it so much easier. You'll see why. Just a little bit of olive oil in the pan, too much, and the pizza has a really fried taste to it. Just a dab. And I do like to put some seasonings in this oil, a little pinch of dried oregano, basil, chili flakes, whatever you like, and a tiny pinch of salt. A little salt goes a long way here. And then you just completely coat the pan. This results in a distinct layer of flavor on the bottom of the pizza that is quite tasty. Heterogeneity. And while my hands are still greasy, I'll grab my dough ball and plop it in. I used to stretch the dough first and then lay it in the pan. I found it's easier to just mash it straight into the pan with my fingertips. This also helps me to get a more even thickness throughout. If you do traditional stretching up in the air, the thick outer ring of dough you get tends to make all of the sauce and cheese pool into the center with this style of pizza. I'm stretching it up past the corner of the pan, not because I want it up there, but because I know this dough is going to contract before all is said and done, so start wider than you want it. I'll rub a thin layer of oil on top because it tastes good and because it'll keep this from drying out as it gets a second rise in the pan, at least for a half an hour. That really helps it bake up lighter and fluffier. It tends to be kind of dense and doughy if you skip this second rise. And while it's rising, we can prep everything else. For sauce, I'm still on this particular make and model of canned tomatoes. It's the best thing for pizza sauce I can find in U.S. grocery stores. When I can't find it, I use another brand of crushed or ground tomatoes and I spike it with a little tomato paste for extra flavor. I don't normally measure it, but 1/3 of a cup is perfect for a pan pizza this size, IMHO. Here's my new favorite pizza herb, marjoram. Smells like tea, but tastes like oregano crossed with thyme, maybe. I'll also use some oregano and basil and a tiny pinch of sugar, a little chili flakes, black pepper, and a dab of olive oil. Stir it all up, and that's it. If it looks like not quite enough sauce to me, then it's probably exactly enough. Let's prep our cheese. For New York-style pizza, I scour the earth for whole milk, low-moisture mozzarella, but on my pan pizzas, I've really been liking the part-skim kind lately, and this stuff is way easier to find. It's got to be low moisture, though. That's an 8-ounce block. I'll use 5 or 6 ounces, like 150 grams. I miss the full-fat flavor, but the part-skim kind just seems to brown better with this particular recipe, and for that same reason, I think it's particularly important to avoid pre-grated cheese for this. The anti-clumping starch they put on the pre-grated stuff is particularly likely to burn with this method I'm going to show you. There we go. And lastly, I do like to put some grated parmesan over the sauce layer. I suppose now's as good a time as any to admit that I prefer the pre-grated stuff for pizza. I have real Parmigiano Reggiano in the fridge right now. I could use it, but it just doesn't taste right on pizza to me. The fake stuff tastes right to me. Last thing to prep is my topping. Whatever toppings you want are fine, but this is my new favorite pizza topping, a tiny clove of fresh garlic. Tiny because we're going to eat it raw, and raw garlic is super strong. Just a couple little shavings of lemon zest. The bright yellow yellow part with as little of the underlying white pith as possible, and then a little bunch of fresh parsley. Chop it all up and you've got gremolata, the traditional last-minute garnish for lots of Italian dishes. Chopping those three ingredients into each other really does seem to spark a chemical reaction between them. The result tastes like more than the sum of its parts. A last-minute sprinkling of that makes all kinds of things taste fresher and, more sophisticated. Okay, the dough has visibly puffed up a bit, so we're ready to bake. You can simply top your dough and then throw the whole pan into a screaming hot oven. That's traditional, but what I do is a lot more energy efficient, it's easier to control, and it gets you a much browner bottom. Heat on medium. And at the same time, I'll get my oven's broiler heating to max. That's the element at the top of the oven. It heats up in a flash, and I've got a rack positioned pretty close to it. After a minute, I can see the dough puffing up, and after 4 minutes, I can smell it starting to brown. With my old method, I would start topping the pizza now, but the way I cook it these days is to completely finish browning the bottom before anything else goes in. You do it this way, and you can use a soft spatula to lift up the dough and see exactly what's going on. With the nonstick pan, you can just kind of shake it like an omelet to make sure it's not stuck, and you can move it or rotate it around if some parts seem to be browning more than others. With my old method, you'd have to guess when the bottom is perfect. With this method, there's no guessing. You just cook it until you like the bottom. I like it just starting to burn. A little burning is part of what makes bread taste like pizza to me. And there we are, so off the heat this comes. Now there's no particular rush. I'll just smooth my sauce around edge to edge, no bare ring of crust around the edge. The stuff on the sides of the pan will caramelize and go super sweet. Dust on a little parmesan, or whatever you want to call this substance. It really enhances the flavor, and hiding it under the mozzarella layer keeps it from burning. Again, edge to edge with the mozz. Those bits of cheese touching the sides of the pan are going to do magical things. That's it, and under the grill this goes. Brits call it a grill. I find this pizza cooks much better and faster if I keep my oven door closed. Yes, people say you should not put Teflon under the broiler. It could overheat and put off toxic fumes. Good advice, but this is only going to be under there for literally 2 minutes. I've done tests with my infrared thermometer. The exposed Teflon never got remotely close to the temperature at which PTFE starts to break down, causing polymer fume fever in very high doses. It never got close. If you can't risk it, or if you have a pet bird around, use cast iron. Birds are super sensitive to polymer fumes. But I'm super sensitive to pizza fumes, and this smells awesome. You just pull it when it's brown to your liking. Look at that crispy cheese on the edge, and because I used a non-stick pan, it's going to come right off. I'll sprinkle on my gremolata. You want to let this cool in the pan for just a few minutes, just until it's solidified enough that you can get it out intact. The sooner you get it out to a cooling rack, the crispier the bottom will be. And look, with a non-stick, you can literally just slide the pizza out like an omelet. Couldn't be easier. Now that it's on the rack where steam can escape, you're safe to let this cool as long as you want before eating. I like to let it cool way down. Hey, look up! Yeah, there you can see that super dark and even brown bottom, but it's got nothing I ain't seen before, though. There's no surprises here. I always hated my old method where you just had to guess when the bottom was perfect. Though say it's not perfect. Maybe you didn't get out of the pan fast enough and now it's soggy. You can very easily just refry this for a few minutes, basically until you hear it start to sizzle again. That'll bring the crust right back to life. I've said in the past that I don't think pizza cutters are good for the home kitchen. I prefer using a knife because a pizza cutter just tends to fall right off the edges of your little cutting board. But with a pizza this small in diameter, it's fine. Cut yours however you want. I like small slices because they are so thick and so rich. The milk has made that crust a little bit cakey in an awesome way. That is just such a great guilty pleasure pie. And look at the rim, those delicious brown cheesy bits. That actually has an Italian name, Frico. It deserves its own name. It deserves its own website from Squarespace. Whether you're starting up a pizza joint, planning to sell pizzas over the internet, or just trying to show off your pizza photography, Squarespace has a site template that you can customize in minutes by simply throwing in your photos, maybe editing them a little bit, and you're off. Squarespace can process payments from your customers. It can empower them to schedule appointments or make reservations with you. And there are new search optimization tools in Squarespace. They analyze your site's traffic and tell you how you can make it easier for people to find you. Squarespace is an all-in-one solution for building and running your site. You can even register your domain through them. And playing with a template is free, but when you're ready to pay for a domain or pay to take your site live, do us both a favor and save 10% at squarespace.com/Ragusia. Now, go Frico yourself.